Okay, guys, we're here today with Garry Tonon. Huge honor for us. So super excited to have him here on our podcast. And guys, Garry Tonon is one of the most enthusiastic athletes in Jiu-Jitsu to watch to compete. So he just got third place in the ADCC this year. He did the best match of the tournament against Renato Canuto. And he's 5 times EBI champion. And as I just said, like every time you watch him competing, he's always like, whoa. He's always like getting out of submissions, going straight to submissions. And it's always like amazing to watch. And we just shot an entire instruction with him all about escaping from submissions and going straight to the submissions, which is called exiting the system. So he pretty much teach how to get out of all the John Danaher submissions. So we also have here Michael Zenga. So thanks for being here, Garry.
Of course, man. Thank you. Yep.
Garry, talk about where you were born, your background.
Oh, it's an interesting story. You know, when a lot of people see Garry Tonon, I think they just see the outside. You know, they see the handsome young stud, the world's most exciting grappler. But they don't see what's inside. You know, the origin story. They don't know where I came from.
For sure.
And I think it all started. One night my parents, it wasn't going well. They were having a fight, and my mom, she wanted to blow off some steam, just separate herself from the situation. Don't want things to get aggressive or anything like that. So she goes out with her friends to a Latin dance club, and she's having a good time. And it was there that she actually met Renato Laranja and Royce Gracie. Cool. And after like minutes of passionate lovemaking in that bathroom in the club, a gift from God was bestowed upon my mother, me, Garry Tonon.
Awesome.
I thought of calling myself Gary Gracie for a bit, but I just thought it was a little redundant, so I just took the name of her husband instead, Tonon. So
cool, nice. So talk about how you got into jiu-jitsu.
So I got into jiu-jitsu from wrestling. Honestly, I was raised by women mostly. Mostly my mother and my sister were around. My stepfather a little bit towards the end, and I didn't really know anything about contact sports. My mom wouldn't let me play football, nothing, but my cousins did wrestling. So I was like, all right.
What age did you start?
I want to say for wrestling, somewhere around like 10, something like that, 11, something. So my cousins did it, so they never got hurt or anything, and they loved it. So my mother was like, all right, we can try wrestling. Let's see how it goes. And I was super aggressive, had all this pent-up energy. So wrestling ended up working out great for me. I had a good time. But it still wasn't like my passion or anything. It's just like, all right, I really like doing this.
This is in New Jersey where wrestling's a big deal.
Yeah, for sure.
So you're doing youth wrestling. Did you wrestle into high school?
A little bit, just like the first year. And that's when I found jiu-jitsu. It was like after my first year of wrestling in high school. And I just liked it a lot more. But so
you weren't winning state titles or anything?
No. If anything, I don't even know if I really made. Maybe occasionally I'd have a varsity match, like if somebody was missing. I would definitely wasn't like head of the team or anything. Sure. I wasn't anything overwhelmingly good in wrestling. Maybe when I first started, against other novices, because I was just so aggressive, I would literally, so they'd start the match and they'd have all right, so one guy on this side would shake hands. Instead of engaging, instead of immediately going into collar ties or whatever you would normally do in wrestling, my strategy at 11 years old was I would backpedal until I was farther away from the person and just sprint at the person and go for a double leg. So I literally just dove in. I didn't know what I was doing.
Ironically, that's kind of how you pass guard. You back up, just dive into that over-under,
Yeah, but that's, until I finally got yelled at by some referee. He's like, you can't do that. You can't just football tackle people or something. I guess he was worried about kids butting heads. I don't know. But I got yelled at. I was like, all right, maybe I'll take a different approach.
Yeah, okay.
But anyway, I was nothing special. Honestly, the level of teaching was a little bit rough. It's the way that they taught American wrestling, at least the coaches that I had, was very much go, go, go. You put as much strength and force and endurance into whatever it is that you're doing. And all right, we show you a double leg for 10 seconds, and now we're going to drill that double leg 1,000 times. Yeah. But not just drill it, slowly and learn the technique. We're going to do it as fast and as hard as possible. Almost we're doing it for a cardio workout instead of actually learning how to do a technique. So I probably learned, a handful of techniques, 10% of what's necessary to finish the technique.
Okay.
So, by the end of 5 years of wrestling, I really didn't know that much. It was basically grappling experience. If it plays anything into my jiu-jitsu game today, what I did in those first 4 or 5 years in youth wrestling, it's probably just getting acclimated to the idea of grappling. Like that's all that I really felt it added to me. I didn't really learn how to really wrestle until I started like doing jiu-jitsu, and I took wrestling privates from a guy named Matt Pletcher. He's captain of the team at Rutgers. John shows a lot of judo and wrestling, and I started to incorporate that, but I was always fond of that. But I really don't think I started operating at a high level doing it until well after I started doing jiu-jitsu.
Got it. So when you started jiu-jitsu, how old are you?
Technically, my first jiu-jitsu class I took at 14, but I was at like a little MMA school, and they only did it like a couple times a week. It was far from my house. I couldn't really get there. So maybe I trained for like a month and a half. I didn't really learned like how to do a rear naked choke. And that was it. They kind of had a similar mentality there where like, they're like, all right, we're going to do arm bars. And he just threw up like 50 arm bars, but never really showed us how to finish one. And it's like, for multiple reasons, I didn't really catch on there. So I just kind of like, I was there for a little bit. I was kind of interested in it, but it wasn't working out. I also like didn't have a car or anything. I'm 14 years old, couldn't ride my bike that distance. So it just kind of all fell apart from every angle. So it wasn't until I was 15 and I really started at Tom DeBlas's school, where I was like going to jiu-jitsu practice every day, multiple classes a day, training as long as I could, and I was able to ride my bike there. It was far enough, it was close enough away from my house where that wasn't a problem. So it was all up to me now as far as how much effort I wanted to put into it. And that was the first time that was ever true for me. Because everything else I did as a kid was like, all right, you're gonna do basketball, soccer, whatever. Your parents bring you to practice, and it's like, you have to go. There is no like, it was up to me. Like if I wanted to go to jiu-jitsu practice, I rode my bike there. If I didn't, I didn't go, but I always wanted to go. So that was the first time where I had control and I took it. Like I was just like, all right, I really want to do this. And, Tom DeBlas was like, a huge, mentor in my life at that point. That was like my first outside the family, big, strong male role model, which I actually like followed, in any way,
You got it. Oh, Garry, one thing that I noticed in the ADCC this year is that your wrestling was on time. So is that a reflex of the MMA or you just, what is that?
It definitely helps because you're definitely engaged in a little bit more wrestling in MMA, like just a higher percentage of time because you're starting on your feet, right? So when I'm doing my shoot boxing workouts, like every day I spar. And while I'm sparring, like I'm mixing in takedowns to sparring. So I may have the big gloves on, so it's a little clumsy, but I'm doing more wrestling exchanges than I ever would have if I was just training jiu-jitsu every day. Because when you train jiu-jitsu every day, like some people start from the feet, but even if you start from the feet, like let's be honest, if you're any good, you take somebody down in the first minute or so. Yeah. Somebody gets taken down, somebody falls down, and then the rest of the match pretty much occurs on the ground. Yeah. Unless you get submitted and then you stand back up, right? So the percentage of time you're spending actually practicing wrestling is so small. So I tell all my students and anybody that actually wants to get good at wrestling, you have to like set aside some time to really wrestle. Yeah. Or at the very least, like if your school's not acclimated to that, like intentionally stand up during your rolls. And I do that all the time. It's like I'll just like be in some position, and instead of sweeping somebody, I just stand up and like, all right, let's wrestle now, just because I want to practice it, right? But in terms of your question, do I think the MMA helped? I absolutely do. It's very different, the wrestling for MMA, because you got a fence, you got strikes to deal with. It's very, very different. But I will say just the pace and the intensity of shoot for a takedown, like that I brought to that Canuto match is very similar to like what I would bring to a mixed martial arts sparring session or fight.
Because the two of us, Bernardo and I, came in to watch you train one day. I remember, and you were controlled with the strikes, but the wrestling you weren't. I mean, you guys were. It was a high level wrestler from Edge. I forget the guy's name. But he had a lot of MMA fights, and you two were battling. And yeah. And so it seems like you go full out with your wrestling.
Yeah, sure.
And you feel like, because this was your fourth trip to ADCC.
Yeah, this is the most recent one was the fourth.
And
time.
I mean, you've had some incredible matches, like memorable. Like you've had, I mean, the heel hook went over Dylan. You had, a 2-0 match with Bushesha, which when you think about is absolutely insane. You had one of the most incredible matches with Crone the year that he won, and then but the difference to come back with a medal this time and to be this close to a gold medal.
True, that's true. I mean, the JT match right at the end, I had the knee bar.
Exactly.
Damn.
Yeah. And Garry, so I think one thing that probably like the entire world want to know is like, so you have this ability to find yourself in a horrible position, get out, and go to a great position. That, by the way, is the entire structure that we are doing. Sure. How did you develop that? Is that something that you do on training, like you let people get in your submission holds and that kind of stuff? How is it?
Yeah, so there's like a lot to it. like I mentioned it in the DVD, but like there's something special about escaping submissions that's a little different, I think, than most of what we do in jiu-jitsu, because you have to force yourself to practice it. Like every other part of jiu-jitsu, for the most part, it's like pretty organic. It's like you have to pass the guard, like you have to try to take somebody's back. You're gonna eventually have to try your own submission holds, otherwise you can't progress, right? But you don't have to try to learn how to escape things unless you're in a position early on in jiu-jitsu, like when you're a white belt, blue belt, where people are constantly putting you in submissions. That's probably the phase of jiu-jitsu where people spend the most time learning how to defend submissions. But after that, once you learn enough preventative strategies to like, all right, well, I know how to protect my arms, I know how to protect my neck. Now every roll, how often do you really find yourself in submission danger? Probably not that much. So in order to keep that skill equal to all these other skills that you're building, I have to go, all right, well, this roll, I'm either gonna start in a fully locked armbar or I'm gonna do something in the roll to give my training partner the arm. And this is something that from an early stage,
Parenthesis here, so you do that against everybody, correct, or against like the guys who are lower level than you. But if you go against Gordon and start with the fully armor, that'll be fun.
I think both are important. Like it's obviously at the beginning when you're first starting, it's you know what? It's not even so much as important the level of the person. It's more important the level of control they have, right? Because like I could go with a white belt, and if he's like just like an angry spaz, and even though he's not good and just rips the arm, well, now I'm in trouble, right? Like Gordon, like he knows like when an arm is gonna break. So like even though he's probably gonna tap me, he's not gonna hurt me. He's gonna slowly go through it. So it's like I think the important thing is to find training partners that you can train with in a safe enough way where you can give them a locked out submission and like like, all right, this guy's gonna protect me. Like he's gonna lock it out to the point where I could get hurt, but he's not gonna take it any further than that. And I think it's like that's where like teamwork in jiu-jitsu kind of comes in, right? Like it's a very individual sport, but it takes a collaborative group of people to like make an athlete like better. Because if you didn't have that, you just had a bunch of scumbags training with you, trying to like rip your shit off all the time. It's kind of tough to go on. But yeah, so I would put myself in bad positions all the time. From the beginning, Tom used to tell me like, hey man, it's a super important, like you got to learn how to get out of bad positions. Cool. And then furthermore, when I was with John, he explained that like, it's kind of like the fundamental basis of what we do. It's like, if you can't escape bad position, what are we even here for? Because once you get put in a bad spot, it's over, right? And now, once you get good at all those defenses, it opens your offense up so much more. Now I can do moves where like, all right, it exposes my back a little bit. So what? If I get put in the back, like I'll get out. It exposes my arm a little bit. Well, no big deal. Like I'll be able to find a way out of there. And it just gives you so much more confidence to try. Like, you talk about like me being exciting and doing like, a lot of crazy moves and stuff like that. It makes it a little easier to do things like that because now there's less risk involved. The more risk I can take away, the more I can take risk. If that makes sense. It sounds like it doesn't make sense, but it does.
Because at the ADCC, we were there, and there was just like a flock of people would go all the way over to your matches. All of them were just like these action-packed Mickey Ward Gotti type, like to boxing and just back and forth. But you put yourself in some crazy danger, and next thing you know, you're out of it. And that's when the crowd is like, you get those deep, like, oh, and then the back and forth.
No, and there is nothing worse when you're competing jiu-jitsu than getting a submission and letting it go. Because the person who is getting out gets out like 1,000,000%, and you are completely frustrated. So and that's your thing. So you probably get out like 2,000,000%, like ready to kill the guy.
It can be very frustrating, I think, for certain people. Because I this is a weird thing to brag about, but I'm gonna brag about it anyway. I think if you take a look at my matches, more so than any other athlete like that's ever existed, I probably get my back taken like more often than, or guard passed, whatever you want to say, more often than any other athlete. Now, when you look at that at face value, you would say to yourself, like, all right, well, if that happens, like, he must suck. It's like, but saying that, if I have my back taken more often than anybody else, why am I not getting submitted? Like, why is that person on my back, is that not resulting in the end of the match every single time? And these are questions that people should ask themselves. Like, the true value of jiu-jitsu, in my opinion, is to be able to do damage. Like, and this is something that John has preached to us, like, once I started going over there, is that, like, it's a martial art. We should be able to have tools to defeat our opponents, not just, like, pin them. Because pinning it's not final. Like, unless you can pin, like in MMA, now I can hit people when I pin them. So pins are a little bit more valuable. But if you can't, then you don't have a way to actually, end the match. Like, let's say I get in a confrontation on the street. It's like, yeah, I can hold somebody in side control, but that doesn't end the confrontation per se, right? Like, submitting somebody does. Strangling somebody, that's the king of the submissions. That ends the confrontation. So it's like super, super important to me to be able to be both good offensively and defensively.
And I think the statistics showed that at this past ADCC, your squad had the most submissions by far.
Yes, I believe so. I think it was a pretty drastic difference, because I think Atos probably was like next in terms of medals maybe, but the submission rate was completely off.
I think, Bernardo, the year you won in 2015, you had the most submissions at Worlds, right?
Yeah, as a guy, I think I just didn't submit one match.
Yeah, Bernardo submits a lot of people. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, with the legs too. So
yeah. So in really impressive ways.
You are. But Gary, one thing that calls me the attention about you and Gordon is that, like, when lights are on, looks like you guys really enjoy that. And I remember when you competed against Gillen, he was my teammate at that time, and there was a ton of hype for that match.
Sure.
And was right in the first match of the tournament. First or second, right?
I have a feeling they probably did that on purpose. The ADCC guys, I see what they're trying to do. You know what I mean? Like, I think they get excited by that stuff as much as we do.
For sure.
You know?
But then, like, what goes on, I think all the users would love to hear that. What goes on your mind on that time? Like, first match, the match that has the biggest hype, what were you thinking? Like,
oh, man, I was excited. It's funny, like, we're bringing it back to the Dillon match, but even in the Canuto match, it was very similar. Like, we could kind of parallel the two, because I had like a previous match with. I didn't have a previous match with Dillon. I think that was my first match with Dillon, but there was, like you said, there was some conflict right before the match. Same thing with Canuto. A bunch of conflict, a little bit of back and forth. We had a match before that. It was a match that I wasn't happy about. There were some things that happened there. So. Both were kind of similar, and like I came out in both of those matches with just like a mindset of like, I can't, as much as I screw around sometimes and like I'm playing like very, very loose. In both of those matches, I was like, no, like I have to win. Like I have to crush these guys. Like I really want to go out there and I want to show everybody what I'm capable of. Because sometimes like when I go out, I have just a different mindset. It's like I go out there and I'm like, all right, let's see what my opponent's going to do first. Now I'm going to counter him, But with those matches, I went in there to win, and that was the thing that was most present in my mind. It was really, but like you said though, it was really like brought a different level of energy into those matches. Like you said, like I was excited to be there. It's like, all right, this is what I live for, you know?
No, I got it.
Yeah.
No, and there are some people that when that time comes, they shrink, and others they grew.
Yeah.
And you're one of the ones that grows on that time.
Because in all fairness, Renato's an incredible competitor too. So to have the two of you get there. I mean,
and Renato is kind of same style. Like he's like the showman. He doesn't
and you both really want to win.
Yeah.
So like who really wins out of the fans?
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
It's always cool to have a match where both guys are really trying to win. Not like really trying to win like I'm just gonna like clam up and like maybe I score my points and I hold out like, all right, like I really want to submit this guy.
Yes.
I really want to like get my attacks off on this guy. It's always, that's what creates the most exciting matches. People are always looking, what's the best rule set? What rules can we make that's gonna make matches exciting? It's like, it's not really the rules, it's the grapplers. You have one guy that doesn't want to participate in a grappling match, and I'm just like shell up like this. All of a sudden, the match isn't that exciting.
I shut him down.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
But as far as, but you really feel though it's your defense that gives you the courage and the wherewithal to get in there and kind of let it all hang out, so to speak.
I look at it as foundational. Like that's to me, that's your building block. It's like, because every time you screw up, everything you mess up, I mess up my guard pass, I mess up my arm lock, or whatever the case may be. The worst case scenario is you ending up in a submission or ending up in a pin. And if you're not really, really good at getting out of those, if you're not supremely confident in your ability to recover, it makes it so much harder to do all the other movements of the sport. Because you're like the anxiety, like things that you're talking about, like some people shrink under the pressure and things like that. That anxiety builds up because you feel like you can't do the task that's at hand.
Yeah, I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
If you
screw up a little bit less.
Yeah, if you like done it 1,000 times, you're like, oh man, like even if I screw this up, I can recover. Actually, that's one thing that I do. Like, so a lot of people visualize before they compete, right? They'll be like, okay, I'm gonna visualize myself. I'm gonna go in there. I'm gonna take his back. I'm gonna strangle. This is my game plan. This, that, and the other thing. I do something very different, and I'm sure other people do this as well, but this is something that I think is somewhat unique to me. I don't like to visualize just that I go in and destroy the competition. I very rarely just do that, because what happens is when you go out there and compete, you find out, hey, this is a living, breathing human being that also bleeds like I do. Yeah, he's tough. Like, he's a game opponent. Like, I'm not gonna just walk on and crush this guy.
No.
I'm not Gordon Ryan. No, but so when you encounter a struggle, it's like, oh wait, I wasn't expecting this, because you've just been visualizing dominating.
That makes sense.
So when I go in,
too optimistic, right?
Yeah, I mean, I go in, I go like, all right, I want to visualize attacking my opponent, then getting put in the worst position possible, getting out and still winning the match, being down by 4 points, and then taking his back and submitting him. And these are the kinds of things that go through my head, so that it prepares me like, no, this is what we prepared for. Like, you knew he was good at taking it back. You knew he had a good arm bar. Like, that, no problem. You're going to get out of this. You're going to recover. You're going to get back. And that, I think that helps me a lot in MMA as well. Because in MMA, there's just so many question marks, so many bad things that could potentially happen, that I need that. I'm like, all right, well, maybe I get knocked down by a punch, and like, I still got this. Like, I still got a way to recover and beat this guy. Maybe he takes me down. Like, I still think I can find a way to victory, instead of just being like, all right, I'm gonna go out there, one punch, got this. You know what I mean?
Because if you don't knock him out, then you think...
Then you get nervous.
Yeah. Oh, Garry, so about the instructional that you just did, explain like a little more, like what exactly you showed, like submission escapes from everywhere. Just tell us a little more, like.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to do to the best degree possible is just encompass as many of the main submission holds in the sport as possible. I think I narrowed it down to like roughly like 15-ish submission holds, something like that. And then the issue is that within those subsets of submissions, you have not only variations of the submission, but also
combinations,
different positions that they can be done from as well. So it's like, there's a lot to cover. So I'm going to cover as much as I possibly can. You know, who knows what's going to happen once we have all the content kind of drummed up and we can take a look at it. Maybe it could be a 2-part series. It's hard to say. But for me right now, ideally, I want to try to give as much of a full look at, defending submissions as I possibly can. And like I said, I'm adding that element of every time I defend, I'm trying to find some way to counterattack if I can. So that's going to be in there as well. I don't cover the attacks as in depth, simply because the focus is on defending the submissions. But I still want that mindset of, we got to find a way to attack. The majority of what I would like to do is create a situation where they watch this DVD and they just use the strategy of the DVD to kind of come up with their own ways to defend things and their own ways to progress in the sport. Because, I mean, you can watch a DVD and you only have so much content, you only have so many things you can learn, and if you can find a way to take principles or concepts from that and then apply it to your own jiu-jitsu, maybe they have their own favorite escapes or whatever the case may be that they like. They may not like what I'm showing. It may not be accustomed to their body type or whatever the case may be. But if you
adapt themselves.
If you understand like the concept behind it and understand my philosophy and my way of thinking, it doesn't matter about the technique specifically that I taught. You can kind of find your own way. Yeah. And that's what I really want to give.
Just to paraphrase what I saw with you with an armbar, you were showing an escape and said, okay, well, what's really blocking me from coming up right now? Because you show what happens with an armbar if the head is not blocked.
Sure.
So, okay, so what I need to do now is address the legs. And it's sort of a very intuitive way. And I think that would explain why you flow so well when you fight. Okay, what is blocking me? Rather than, okay, step one is to clear the leg. It's like you're more addressing what's going on.
Yeah.
You're teaching them how to be problem solvers.
Correct. That's one of the things John did really well teaching us as well. Yeah. And I just think it's a much more useful thing, because now it's like having an ability to, because organically when you're competing, things are going to happen that may have never happened to you before. Yeah. Like when you train, like I'm sure you guys have encountered situations you're like, whoa, what the hell? I've never seen the foot quite there, and I've never been caught with this particular setup. You got guys, there's hundreds of us out there competing at a high level. Like somebody's going to come up with a way to set something up that you haven't seen before. And if you're not good at problem solving, and this is something that John always says, if you're not good at problem solving and you only just memorize moves like a machine, when that new problem arises, what are you going to do? You're hopeless. You don't have
Sometimes like you're not used to, what I found is that I went out to Masters one year. I was not nowhere near the level you're at, but it's shaped differently there. Instead of having all mats that are done in a rectangle, what I'm used to, it's like one long corridor. And I was out there like, this feels weird. This doesn't feel like it ever felt before. And then if you're there trying to just memorize what you thought about, now I have another distraction, screws up your frame of thought.
Yeah.
But with your way of just intuitively solving the problem, whatever comes up seems like a better way to do it.
Sure.
Yeah, that's one thing that I noticed from John. We noticed that kind of differentiates him from the other instructors, that everybody was coming here and this is the technique, boom. And John was like overwhelming them with concepts. So even if you don't do exactly what he showed, as long as you understood the concepts, now you can do it.
I think that kind of gets into like where we sell our videos. I mean, we realize that there's a lot of great free stuff out there on YouTube. You can go look up any movie you want to get.
Sure.
But what you can't get are the concepts that you teach, the coherent,
in order,
the way in order, and that sort of thing. Yeah,
it's tough.
Yeah.
When you just one of the things I think that I usually describe to my own students, especially at a basic level, that John has done differently, and now we do differently when we teach, is I think when people start training jiu-jitsu, it's like there's this big puzzle we're trying to finish, and they start training and they take class, and at one class they get thrown 5 pieces of the puzzle, but they're random pieces, right? They might not, even those 5 pieces might not necessarily connect. Now a good, I would say an average teacher at least, or I guess a little bit above average, will at least give you 5 pieces of the puzzle that connect to each other. So at least you have some sense of what's going on. I would say most teachers, though, probably just give you 5 random ones. You know, I would say you go to the average gym, probably somebody that doesn't compete or whatever. Here's a guillotine, here's an armbar. None of them connect, right? So you get a decent teacher, he connects those. But one of the things John does is before you have those random pieces, at the beginning, he shows us the whole picture. Like, you know, when you're making a puzzle, you look at like the finished product first so that you can help put the pieces in the right spot. A lot of people don't get that full picture until they've been training jiu-jitsu for like 2 years, because now they've collected 100 pieces or so of this puzzle, and they're like, all right, I kind of see what we're trying to work with here. So what he did, you know, I don't know if you saw the Joe Rogan podcast or if he did it in any of his DVDs here, talks about that like 4-step system. All right, we're going to take the guy down, we're going to pass his legs, all right, we're going to pin him in different situations, and then we're going to look to extend the limb and submit. And you go through that simple process and you're like, oh, that's what jiu-jitsu is. There's the picture. Now every technique that I learn, I fit it into that little rubric, and I can make this puzzle. And you see that so early on, and I think that's what helps a lot of these athletes that he teaches and I teach move along a little bit faster than some other.
No, I understand. Oh, Gary, just to finish, like every time John comes here asking this question, so what's next, like on your MMA career?
So for me, I'm hoping to fight the first thing in the beginning of the year. I'm hoping like January fight. I was hoping December, but it doesn't seem like it's shaping up. There was I had to like renegotiate my contract, because like you have a contract for a certain set amount of fights, etc. And then if you have your last fight, then you're out in the free market and everybody can, you know, fight for you and whatever. And obviously that's not in the organization's best interest. So they try to find a way to make sure that you never end up a free agent. And like, hey, listen, we want to keep you. Well, if they like you anyway. Hey, we want to keep you. You know, here's what we're going to do. And then, so it took a while to negotiate and just figure out, you know, what was good for both parties, what was good for one, what was good for me. And now that we've reached like a good solid agreement, I'm very happy. I think they're very happy. We can move forward, and I'm excited to see the other things that I can do in one. I hear that potentially next year in 2020, they'll be coming to the US, possibly New York. I'm not 100% sure if that's confirmed. They haven't released all their cards yet. But I'm really looking forward to that if that's a possibility. You know, so I'm just getting my experience in. I got 5 fights right now. Some of the greatest guys in the UFC are somewhere up to like 30 fights or so. Some people even more. So, you know, right now with no amateur career, and this is the only 5 fights that I've ever had in my entire life, like I'm really just focused on, let me try to fight as often as possible. You know, so long as I don't get hurt, I'm going to keep fighting.
And how old are you right now?
28.
Oh, man.
Just turned 28.
You have a long career still.
That's what we hope.
No, that's amazing. And the goal is to do as many fights as you can and win every single one.
Yeah, get as many in as possible. Get that experience in. Very soon, I should be fighting for the championship belt. I would think at 155. I would imagine maybe one more fight they'll give me, and then the championship. That's what I'm hoping for. And then, you know, I have bigger plans. I'm always looking to the future. I'd like that 70-pound belt as well. You know, and then after that, we'll see. I'm not really sure, but those are my next 2 goals, my 2 big goals: is win at 55 and win at 70.
So let's say 55. Let's say you win the one belt, and somehow there was a unification match. Would you fight Khabib?
Oh, well, it's technically in the UFC, that is a different weight category. It's 55 for us, but they call it featherweight. And then the reason they call it featherweight is because the weight cutting is completely different. So Khabib probably walks around somewhere around 200 to 195. And if you walked around at that, I don't think you'd ever make 55 and 1 because you have to weigh in like twice in a row. You have a hydration test. You can't cut that much weight. So technically we're in different weight classes, but would I fight Khabib? Man, if I was in a position to do it and I had the experience and it was the right time, absolutely. You know, do I think I could beat him right now? You know, I can't wait till after this interview comes out and everybody tells me I'm a piece of shit for saying this, but do I think I could beat him right now? I'm yeah, whatever, you're delusional. But do I think I could beat him right now? Do I think I could beat almost anybody in the world around my weight class right now? Yes, in MMA. Do I think it's possible? Absolutely. I have the skills to submit people. It's like a great boxer who has a devastating knockout punch. You know, like Mike Tyson. If you in his prime, if you threw him into a UFC fight, could he beat anybody in the world? Of course. How could you argue? Of course, I'm not saying I'm Mike Tyson, but you get the idea. I have things that I can do that can end a fight in an instant.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
right? The question is, what percentage of the time am I going to win that fight? Am I going to win 9 out of 10 fights against Khabib right now? Probably not. I think that would be delusional for me to think that.
Yeah.
Am I gonna win 1 out of 10 fights? Yeah, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's realistic. I think it's realistic to believe that 1 out of 10 times I could beat that guy. But I don't want to get to that level and
10% chance.
with 10% chance.
Yeah.
Why would I do that to myself?
Yeah, for sure.
When instead I could have a successful, career and
go
win
50, 60,
and exactly.
There's still only 5
and
fights
be
in.
and be the champion and be a dominant force. Like it's just not time for that right now.
Yeah, okay.
You know, and when it is, I'll be ready for the challenge, right?
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to fighting guys like that and fighting at the highest level. I'm doing this to be the best. I tell people all the time, if you're doing MMA, I'm just gonna take a fight. I just want to see what it feels like. Bad idea.
That's the most
Too dangerous.
That's the most level-headed answer I've ever got from someone from New Jersey on a question like that.
Yeah, true. Let me bang, bro.
No, but I always told John that, for example, many times you see guys with great jiu-jitsu and then they go to MMA, but they're kind of slow and the jiu-jitsu doesn't work. So I think your case is completely different because you're crazy fast and anything can happen like less than 1 second. So I think that's the jiu-jitsu that works for MMA.
Yeah. Zenga was talking to me about it a little bit too, and I also agree that there is a certain degree of like explosivity required for being good at MMA. And I hate to break things down into attributes because I much prefer to like imagine that in a perfect world that as long as you have the best technique, like you're always going to win. But it is an attribute that definitely matters in MMA.
Yeah,
it's hard to argue because even just striking by itself, it's like, man, if you're not explosive, like striking just doesn't work. I can't punch people like this.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't work.
No, I agree.
And we've seen some jiu-jitsu guys try and they just don't have the fast twitch enough to do it.
Yeah, and then it's 3 rounds of 5 minutes. It's not 1 round of 20 minutes. They can cook the guy in.
For sure.
Yeah. No, but Garry, man, thanks so much.
Thanks,
that
guys.
Was great.
Having a great time. I'm
Guys,
looking forward to producing this instructional.
Guys, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And if you're listening on our podcast, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review to help us to grow the podcast. Thanks so much, Garry.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Please help me out to grow my YouTube channel. Just click subscribe. And to watch more videos, just click under see more videos. I hope you enjoyed.
BJJFanatics.com. Use the promo code YouTubeFaria to get 10% off any instructional video. Improve your jiu-jitsu faster.